and welcome back to Live and Breathe Horses. We're going on with our Words of Wisdom series, and we're on actually the fourth book we've done from Nuno Oliveira, Horses and Their Riders. And today the chapter is about teaching the beginning rider. So this is a lovely chapter for me. You know, I love to work with beginners with that fresh perspective. So let's see what he advises. The teacher in charge of a beginner must, first of all, know the horses very well, be calm, with complete stable nerves, and must be intelligent enough to understand his pupil's character, or observant enough, perhaps. Unfortunately, one sees in many countries of the world instructors who've not been prepared to observe their pupils, nor choose the horses suitable to them, and do not know anything else but the repetition of generalities of only one method. To teach a beginner does not necessarily mean to fill the complete hour's lesson. The lesson can be shorter or longer according to the individual. First, one must create self-confidence in the pupil. 25 years ago, I trained many new riders. I believed that at the time my pupils were very relaxed and secure on a horse. You see, like we said in the last chapter, insisting on the calmness of the horse, and of course it's the same, insisting on the calmness of the people. First, I put them on a calm horse on the lunge rein and with a vaulting surcingle. They're starting by doing lots of gymnastic exercises to make their bodies more supple. They learn to take their hands off the surcingle and to stay in the correct position. Afterwards, when I put them in a collective lesson, I was very careful to choose a horse which was best suited to each rider. And I was also always taking care to place in the lead a horse who had a good cadence and gave the correct pace for the other horses. I tried to instill into the beginner the notion of the forward movement without using force. It's a rule without exception. And I love that thing about, you know, for beginners that they learn to have balance and feel good on the horse before they take the reins or control the horse. You know, this thing with the surcingle on the lunge, that's a wonderful way to do it. If only we'd all got to start like that. Or if everybody could, you know. Of course, one must also create fast reflexes so as to be able to react rapidly at the right moment with firmness but without brutality. Some riders must be slowed down in their impetuosity and others need to be wakened up. It's up to the teacher to observe the character of his pupil. The work without stirrups is also important under the condition that the leg falls naturally without forcing the heel down, as I often see it done by some teachers. Observe later those who have been instructed in that manner and see how they use their legs in the most difficult airs of the haute école. To sit well and to be correctly seated on a horse is not the same as looking nice on a horse. One is looking nice on a horse when the horse looks nice because the rider does not interfere with him, either with his hands or with his legs or with his body that stays too straight and rigid. If a young beginner is enthusiastic for one or another discipline, either jumping or combined training or dressage, he must first be supple on a horse. He must feel the movement of the horse to be able to jump obstacles, to be able to gallop on the outdoor run, to jump a ditch or a gate, and to know what one used to call the aids for the basse école, or bass. Not sure how you pronounce that. If one trained beginners this way, one would not see barbarians in the jumping discipline and stiff rheumatic people in dressage. Equitation is the same for all disciplines of horsemanship. For instance, one rider will jump 2 meters whilst another will do flying changes every stride in a serpentine. Schools that I often see in different countries that one pompously calls dressage academies are completely ridiculous, because all one is able to learn there is to instill in the rider's head that the horse must do such and such a merry-go-round and no more than that. I remember a famous international jumping competition in Lisbon in about 1961, where Brigadier General Enrique Calado entered the arena to compete in the Grand Prix with his horse Xomax, doing the flying changes every stride. So yes, you don't see many show jumpers doing that nowadays. The horse did them perfectly with invisible aids from his rider. Only a few days ago, I saw a film of so-called great dressage riders of our time, whose legs, in the flying changes every stride, wandered everywhere, and with the horses leaning on the reins. In conclusion, the instructor who teaches beginners must, by his understanding of his pupil, create an all-round rider who will choose later the best discipline he likes for himself. I remember a few years ago giving a lesson to a group of riders, among whom there were 2 young professional instructors. I asked each one in turn to stay in the middle of the group or to lead lessons. I noticed the tone of voice they were using, and I showed them the type of voice to use for various movements, on various occasions and for the various horses. The voice of the instructor must be reassuring, soothing, encouraging, rapid if necessary, but without nervousness. What I've just written is very important. So many times I've seen instructors shout at random without realising the state of mind of the riders. I think we've all had that experience. I know I have, to the point of tears being shouted at by people. So, 40 years of giving me lessons have taught me a lot. Also, an important point is to know if it's more suitable for the pupil to work by himself or in a group. Some riders feel less confident when alone and are more motivated and interested when in a group, while others, on the contrary, prefer to be alone. The teacher must understand the temperament of his pupil and make him progress while keeping him relaxed in his mind and his body. One must be able to say, "Very good," to encourage the pupil. Very good for his level, even if it's not perfect yet. One must be able also to tell the pupil it's bad without discouraging his enthusiasm. Yeah, and in those 2 things lie the skill of being a good teacher. This is what I aim for. I always try to keep that in mind. It's so important. Unfortunately, one often sees this noble craft practiced by ill-prepared people, either without true equestrian knowledge or psychologically ill prepared to be good pedagogues. The student rider must first learn on supple and well-balanced horses in order to have the correct notion of what riding is. Only when he is at ease on such horses and has a correct knowledge of what a well-balanced horse is, will he be able to ride or train a green horse. For a riding school to be worthy of its name, it must have horses capable of teaching the pupils. For this, the one who directs the school must either be competent or have competent people to train the horses and keep them trained. This is the way my school has always functioned. It requires more work and the profit-earning capacity is less. But only under these circumstances can one really call it a riding school. A riding school must be run by someone who deserves the name of écuyer. I remind you that Monsieur de Pluvinel was the first person to be given this title, was among other things Professor of Etiquette to the King of France and Ambassador to France. So that's quite something to live up to. So thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to see you next time when we come back with chapter 8. Thank you. Have a good day and keep tuning into the light.